Hey yo, what's up? In this video, we're gonna dive deep behind the scenes into one of my productions for my song called When Spirit Meets Matter. And we're gonna talk about the instrumentation, how the ideas came to be, maybe some of the mix, whatever seems to come up. And I can almost guarantee you that this will be different than 99.9% of any other productions that you may have looked at or any kind of songs that you might have looked behind the scenes at, because I make some pretty experimental stuff. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hey yo, it's Alex from My Music, and as always with this channel, it's my mission to help you, the artist, produce themselves by developing their mindset, expanding their creativity, and connecting to their music in a deeper way. And like I said earlier, we're gonna dive behind the scenes into one of my songs and talk about how it came together and some of the production techniques that have gone behind it. If you want to check out the full song in its final form, I'll throw a link to it in the description below. Just a side note, if you want to learn more about the workflow process that I used to take this song from its first ideas all the way to a finished master that I regularly use for all of my music, I've created a free Notion template that goes over the big picture stages that I take my productions through. So if you're interested in grabbing that, you can find it in the link below. All right, enough talking. Let's get into Ableton and let's look at what's going on with this crazy song. I'm just gonna play a little section for you so you can get an idea of what's going on, and then we'll just start talking about it, okay? All right, so there's a little taste of what it sounds like, and this song is quite experimental. It's definitely what inspired me to make a whole group of songs in this kind of direction. So it kind of set the tone for a bunch of other songs that I came up with in this kind of direction. I don't know what you would call this. It's like experimental, electronic, guitar-focused, mind-bending adventures. So yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. So the song starts off with these guitars. So let me solo these. And this is actually the first idea that happened to create this whole song. Okay. And the strategy behind creating this idea was funny. It was basically, I just plugged my guitar in to my pedal board and I just played anything and recorded the output. And I found this little tidbit, this tiny little riff in that kind of larger recording. And I was like, this riff has something to it, has a unique rhythm. So I'll just play this to you. So by itself, it doesn't sound too crazy, but if we turn on the metronome to hear how it interplays with the clock, you can hear the crazy rhythm that's going on, as well as these guitars have a lower octave effect on them. So I'm playing a normal guitar tuning, but it's a whole octave lower, and the tone is mixed in with the normal guitar sound. But I'm just gonna play that again with this metronome so you can get a sense of the meter. All right, so that might sound absolutely chaotic, and it kind of is, but what's kind of happening here is we have a normal 4/4 timing where each of these grooves are like groups of 4, but you'll notice that this riff lasts 5 groups of 4 before it wraps around. So there's kind of a polyrhythm going on with the main pulse of the song and this guitar riff, okay? And that's the big kind of idea behind this track in general. So if we go over here and start listening to the drums. Let me solo the drums here. I got a drum group. And let's just solo the drums with the pulse. Okay, so very odd timing, staggering groove. So this is, I think, the main pull of this whole song is that it's a very odd rhythm, very unique, different, weird, whatever you want to call it. But if you look at this whole drum, so we have the drum separated. I created this all on one like drum rack to start, but then when I mixed it, I exported this into each individual track so we can mix the kick, the snare, everything individually. And if we look at just the length of this drum groove, right? It is the same kind of phrasing of our guitar riff. So the weird thing about this drum groove and the guitar riff, which are both doing the same kind of phrasing, is that if we look at these blocks, 2 of these blocks is essentially 1 bar and it lasts 5 bars. Okay, so it's kind of an odd number. And the accents of this drum beat, as you can hear, fall heavily syncopated from this kind of 4 on the floor pulse, whereas a lot of the accents of the kick and the snare aren't landing anything relative to the main pulse that everything is following. All right, so right there you can kind of hear there's a lot going on. It feels like a crazy polyrhythm. Maybe that's not interesting, but if we take off this main pulse, now you can hear just the drum groove doing that phrase along with the guitar riff. And this is where we get a sense of the phrase more than the core pulse that's going on. That's how it kind of starts. That brings it in. The next layer that comes in, I'll just unsolo these, is a percussion loop. So far in the song, we don't really get the sense that there is that kind of pulse underneath this. We're really just listening to that guitar phrase and then this drum phrase on top that's accentuating that kind of guitar phrase and matching it. But now we throw in something that's actually moving with the pulse of the song. So if I turn the metronome back on and we listen to this percussion loop, right? Very normal. We enhance and we emphasize the fact that, hey, what we're listening to is super weird. So bringing this loop in is a percussive layer that keeps us rooted to this core pulse of the song in 4/4. And then now it really emphasizes the unique kind of accents that this drum groove has, as well as the guitar riff when we play this together. Okay, so I'm just going to solo the drum beat and this percussive rhythm and show you how the introduction of this extra layer contextualizes the drum part in a whole different way. Okay, so let's just play this drum beat from here. Okay, so it creates a lot of rhythmic texture, a lot of rhythmic interest, and it is also a polyrhythm. So the song starts out with just this guitar riff, and then that weird drum groove comes in on top of the guitar riff, which matches it. And at the same time, that's where the guitar lead comes in. So it's just kind of doing its own thing. I'm essentially just hitting some harmonics with a ton of reverb and delay on it in a timing that works with the other layers. Okay, and then the bass comes in. So now we get some extra low end content, and the bass is essentially just following the same riff as the guitars because there's a ton of stuff going on already. It's super rhythmically complex, so we don't need any extra rhythm. So I just made it match. So here's just the rhythm guitars with that bass. And on this bass, there's some automation, I think, on like the filter frequency or something like that to give it a little bit of extra harmonic character. So you can see the filter resonance actually gets pushed up, so we get a lot more high-end content for certain notes of this kind of bass riff. And then basically just have this like trippy guitar layer on top that's just hitting these big reverb caked chords to just drench on top of this to really just keep the focus on the rhythmic interplay, because that's the main thing of this song for sure. And then, yeah, just having fun and playing a couple notes on top of everything else. All right, so super long delay tails, a lot of reverb, some saturation on here to almost get it to sound like a synth, like it's very harmonically dense. And one thing to keep in mind when you're working with very wide stereo sounds, whether it's a delay sound or a synth patch or anything, you want to make sure to always check any phasing issues with your stereo image, because often, if we have super wide stereo sounds, they can actually phase each other out if they are too wide. And then when you collapse back to mono, then it will actually, you'll lose signal. So you always want to check that. So that's why I have a utility here, just taking away some of the width of what I had coming out of my pedal board. So that's just a fun little tip to keep in mind. So let's keep listening. And then when we keep moving on, then we have an extra bass layer, which I'll solo, which is really just accenting really intense rhythms on top of this drum beat to just add an extra layer of accent and really emphasize the punches of the rhythm that come in. So I'll just solo this to you so you can hear what it sounds like. Okay, so it's panning a little bit, right? Going from side to side, and it's super staccato, right? It sounds like gunshots, right? But that with this rhythm and this percussive layer really has a groove to it. All right, so let's listen to it all together for when those punches come in. And then we just have like some extra layer. I have this ambient guitar layer that comes in and brings in this high-end pad sound. And then we have a riser that is also fading in and kind of creates a harmony just to really bring in the quote-unquote verse when the lead guitar comes in. All right, and obviously that's going to a delay and reverbed out, so fading into this verse. So essentially, when that lead guitar comes in, we have this groove established, and it's not quite as weird now. Like we've heard it enough times where hopefully your mind can get some sort of sense out of it. And then the lead guitar comes in. So that whole section, there's just a lead guitar. And then this next part changes a little bit where we introduce some chords. So I'll play what those chords sound like. So these new chords add some harmonic interest to what's going on, because before we've kind of just been in one zone. So we introduce these new chords, and then the guitar lead starts to match this new harmonic information. And during this part, when these new chords come in, this drum beat changes slightly, whereas we add another snare. So it kind of changes the feel of the backbeat as these new chords come in. So I'll play those two together, and we still also have this percussive loop playing on top. So that extra kind of snare layer adds a different backbeat interpretation of the groove. Okay, so we kind of have more of like a normal 4 on the floor until the end of the phrase. And then also the bass now is matching these chords. So I'll just play the bass and the chords together. So a little bit of a different mood than the intro. And then, of course, the guitar lead, we'll throw that on top, is matching those chords. I just kind of improvised on top of that and took my best take from that. And then let's listen to the next section. The next section has some buffoonery going on, definitely. So let's just listen to that. So this next section, the bass, the drums, and the chords are essentially doing the same thing. We're still in that kind of chromatic, weird, jazzy place. However, now we introduce this kind of guitar lead where it's doing some sweep picking, and I'm really trying to emphasize these chord changes because they're pretty chromatic. And then in this sweep picking, I'm really emphasizing a triplet feel, right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there's that triplet feel, and then that triplet feel on top of the drum beat sounds like this. Okay, and then we go into the final section of this song, which this whole song is pretty much just an intro to the whole album. Yeah, it's basically like the final climax before it leads into the next song on the album. So the first thing about this is that now we're kind of in a normal groove with the meter of this song. Okay, we're in like a 4/4 normal kind of beat. So some semblance of normalcy here. So if I put the click on and play the beat here. No kind of weird polyrhythm, just straight ahead. We have this acoustic guitar that are playing the same chords, the same type of chords as this jazzy progression that we've been in, but just on guitar with a different voicing. And then I have this other layer, which I just took the same acoustic guitar I was playing with and threw some effects on it. So believe it or not, that weird trippy effect is guitar. So those two together over this more straight ahead drum groove. And then we reintroduce the same chords that we're playing before. And then finally, I added this weird saxophone sample that I found and like chopped it up and started playing it. So that sounded pretty cool. You can definitely hear the crazy long delay on the sax kind of part. And I have that with my return tracks. I have 2 different delays, but I'm using the Valhalla Supermassive, which is a free plugin. Definitely get that plugin. It's amazing and it's free, but for these crazy delays on this sax. Right, it's kind of going around your head with that crazy delay. And yeah, and then basically that's the end of the song. We have this bass line that's kind of playing these staccato parts. Right, and that's moving along with, again, this chord progression. Kind of got like a swing to it, kind of this like weird hip hop vibe. And yeah, that brings out the end of the song. And then that effect at the end is basically, I think I'm taking the feedback time of the delay that was on the saxophone and just ramping it up so it creates this kind of cascading frozen reverb on that sax sample until it fades into the next song. And hey, if you're just getting started with music production and feeling completely overwhelmed by the process, or if you've been at this for a while but are having trouble getting the results you want out of the speakers, or if you just want to get a glimpse inside my own personal workflow, I've created a super in-depth masterclass called How to Master the 3 Secrets of the Creative Process. And I've jammed it full of actionable insights that I've learned on my 10+ year journey to help you unlock your own creative voice, your own creative workflow, and really just bring your music to a whole other level. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can find it in the description below. And that's about it. That's kind of a glimpse behind the production of my song When Spirit Meets Matter. I hope that it was useful. I hope that it was maybe inspiring to you to venture into your own musical world and create something unique in your own way with your own voice. If you got value out of this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you want to stay in tune for the next Metamind music transmission, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments down below, was a video of this style useful for you? Did you like it? Did you find it valuable to get some glimpses behind some of the productions of my songs personally? If you like this kind of stuff, I've got a ton more projects, a ton more material that I can walk through and have some fun chatting about as well. So just let me know in the comments down below. And with that said, I will love you and leave you, and I will see you in the next video. Whoa. My name is Alex.